Welcome back to another recording of the Elevate Media Podcast. I am Chris Anderson, your host, and today we're going to be talking about podcasting, which is perfect for those listening. And if you're watching, I'm sure you've listened to a podcast or two. You might even have your own or have thought about starting your own podcast. And so we brought on an expert in podcast growth. He's helping entrepreneurs turn their slow growth podcast into a rapidly growing positive ROI show. He's also the best-selling author of the book Podcast Made Simple and the co-host of Why Your Podcast Isn't Growing. He's also the co-founder of Get More Listeners. Today, we've got Anthony Ari on the show. Anthony, welcome to the show, man.
What's up, Chris? Dude, this is so good to be on. I'm really excited about this. Dude, we've been trying to get this organized for like the last 6 months nearly. It feels like
it's been crazy. Always something
really good.
Yeah.
So it feels really good to kind of be on and have this conversation. I think it's going to be an awesome one. We've known each other for such a long time now. I respect you in the space. So it feels like a pleasure being on your show and having this back and forth and conversation all about podcasts and podcast growth.
Yeah, man, it's an honor to have you on. For those who don't know, probably no one really, but Anthony, we like connected years ago, like when we both were kind of just starting everything and trying to figure it all out. When we were brand new into entrepreneurship and podcasting and everything. So, man, it's been, we've both been on our journeys and been able to catch up and, support and, give feedback to one another. And it's been really cool to just see the success that Anthony's been having. And now we're going to talk about it on the show a little bit more. So, it's just a neat kind of full circle moment. And I'm sure it was the last time we have you on. So, but yeah, man. So, like, tell me, like, what got you into podcasting? Like, why did you get into the game?
Dude, that's a great question. I'd love to sit here, Chris, mate, and say that it was, I was strategic and I thought it all out and the stars perfectly aligned. But the honest truth is, it was basically like a mixture of dumb luck and just seeing some trends, So 3.5 years ago, no, 4 years ago now, when lockdown originally happened, which was, by the way, 4 years, insane, right?
Yeah.
So 4 years ago when lockdown happened, around this period, I was still in college, university for those in the UK. And I was feeling pretty lost. I've always been someone who's very ambitious, very driven. And all my life, I've always wanted to do something great, but I had no idea what that thing would be.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to university because I had my parents who were hardworking, moved to the UK, from Nigeria to give their kids more opportunity and more freedom to explore and to become better things of themselves. And if you're someone who knows anything about African parents or that region, is a typical, education. You got to work, you got to get your degree, and you got to get yourself into a good career. So when they moved it here, that's kind of their idea to have us have more opportunities. So going to university was partly me, honestly, wanting to buy myself time because I knew I wanted to buy a business.
Nice.
But it was also because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and it felt like, okay, let me just take this next step, buy myself some time and then focus whilst keeping my parents at bay, right? But eventually going through university, it got to the point where I was kind of like finding myself feeling a bit lost. Like, why am I working harder than the degree I didn't really care about? So when lockdown happened, I was in my second year and it provided me this opportunity where I could really focus in on what I wanted to do. I remember an evening kind of just sitting down and praying to God saying, dude, I just need some direction.
Yeah.
I've got no idea where I'm going, what I'm doing, anything. If it means me being a bin man, I'll do it. I'll do it. And, I'll do it on the fly. It doesn't matter. And upon that, I kind of discovered something called self-publishing. And this is a way to generate an income online by producing a high quality book and selling that through Amazon, known as Kindle Direct Publishing.
Yeah.
And that spoke to me, a way to kind of affect people and provide value to the world through a book. And in doing so, getting paid and compensated for it. So that was attractive to me. So I invested in the program about $1,000. And me and my business partner, Tygo Shares, just got ourselves stuck in. And we decided to go with podcasting. Honestly, it was, again, pretty much dumb luck. And it's just a bit of like, okay, podcasting is an uptrend. We like listening to podcasts. So let's just take the next step forward and just make a book on podcasting.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, at this point, we weren't podcasters ourselves. We knew absolutely nothing. We were two dumb, broke college students who knew nothing about anything to do with business or podcasting. So it was a massive learning experience all in all. But we dug ourselves, we got stuck in. We fully committed. And and of course you have ups and downs along the way. But that's really how I got into it.
That's awesome. And, it's fun to hear how people get into podcasting because it's all for different things. Mine was because I wanted to learn about entrepreneurship and business. And,
Mm,
I'd been listening to Lewis Howes School of Greatness. And I was like, well, shoot, I can learn as I'm building something. And so that kind of got
mm.
me into it. And, back then it was pencil leadership and I had different ideas, which, failed, didn't work out. And I learned real quick, but yeah, I think there's just the path that takes us to podcasting. If you're in the space, they're all unique. And I think it's a cool thing to hear those stories. So, you got the book going, you're learning about podcasting, sharing it with other people. Um, when did you realize, hey, I can help people grow their audience with their podcast?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess it naturally started happening. So, when we first launched our first book, it was an absolute failure, right? It was called Every Podcaster's Biggest Hurdles. We didn't talk about it anymore because, we're a bit embarrassed. But let's just say it didn't go so well, right? And we learned a lot of lessons from that when it comes to why the book failed. Because we had two books. We had one, Every Podcaster's Biggest Hurdle, and a
Mm-hmm.
second book, Podcaster Made Simple. One was a bad egg, totally disgusting, was dirty, rotten, didn't make any sales. And another one was a golden egg. It became a bestseller, sold thousands and thousands of copies, helped thousands of podcasters. And there was a lesson there. It was like, why did one succeed and one fail? And
Mm,
the lesson really was our first biggest lesson when it comes to marketing any product, whether that's a podcast, whether that's a book, whether that's yourself, whether that's a car, whether that's any product at all. The principle was simply like, when it comes to the book that you have or the product that you have, just because you have a good idea for a product doesn't mean the market wants it.
yeah.
It's really important to identify kind of what's in demand. And the second lesson it taught us was it's much better to solve one single problem, to keep things simple, rather than trying to overwhelm yourself and to try to please everyone. Every
Mm,
podcaster's biggest hurdle is trying to approach every podcaster's biggest hurdles. Like, what the hell? We thought we were like geniuses. We thought we were mad scientists. We thought there's no book out there like this. Therefore, we're going to become millionaires from this book. It didn't happen, right? It crashed. Whereas Podcaster Made Simple solved one simple problem, helping podcasters launch. So
mhm.
after launching that book and finding success, we ended up kind of building out our network, building out a name for us within the podcasting communities on Facebook groups and communities. And people started reaching out. We also reached out to a ton of people as well, just
Yeah.
offering free training, like free one-on-one calls. Because we quickly realized after launching the first book, great, they've now got this podcast. But the next problem is, well, how the hell do you grow a podcast? Like,
Yeah.
how do you actually get an audience and get people to listen to this show? And that we soon realized was an even bigger problem that people had.
Yep.
So once we got to this point, we helped a ton of people launch their shows. They started asking us, hey, how do we actually grow this podcast? How do we build this audience? And honestly, to be honest with you, Chris, we had to kind of like use a lot of the principles we learned from marketing our books and apply that to podcasting
Yep.
when it comes to having a great cover, a great title, ranking your books on Amazon through SEO.
Mhm.
Same principles as ranking your podcast on Apple and Spotify.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to creating a great product and what makes it engaging, was the exact same as what makes a podcast engaging. Of course, different mediums, different ways to consume the content, but the principles were the same. So that's kind of how we started experimenting and realizing, no, we do understand a lot more about marketing overall. How do we now really focus in on helping podcasters grow? And that's kind of how we got ourselves, and that's how we really noticed that okay, we can help people grow, because we realized quickly that our understanding of marketing applied to podcasting was very
Right.
different to most podcasters who are in the game, just publishing content mindlessly, promoting on social media. They're in the game, whereas we weren't in the game podcasting. We were just marketing and help people grow and launch their shows. So we had a different perspective. We could see
Yeah.
certain things that they couldn't see.
Yes. What are some main things that you see with podcasters who aren't growing?
It's always a perspective thing.
Mhm.
It's always perspective. It's always like what the podcaster believes they need, 9 times out of 10, they believe they need more exposure to grow their podcast.
Mm,
They think if I get my podcast in front of thousands of new listeners every single month through promoting on social media, by getting a celebrity on my podcast, hopefully I can access their audience, by blasting it out to my newsletter, by me guesting on other people's podcasts, by me getting a website to get me exposure and organic reach. It's always exposure that everyone believes is the solution to their problem.
mm,
But the podcast not growing isn't a manifestation, or the podcast not growing is not a result of them not having enough exposure, because they're already promoting, they're already trying to get big profile guests on, they're already doing this consistently for years, they're already maybe guesting on other people's podcasts. The actual problem that's slowing them down is the fact that they can't keep listeners coming back for more.
okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So how would you kind of guide someone high level to get listeners to come back time and time again?
That's a great question. So the first thing I would say is think about your podcast and where you are right now. If your show's on business, amazing. If it's on anxiety, great. If it's on personal development, awesome. Whatever it's on, look objectively and ask yourself, okay, what is uniquely different about my show? If there were 100 podcasts lined up and 1,000 listeners came by, would they stop to mine because I'm clearly different to everyone else?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good
That's
question to
one
ask.
layer.
Yeah.
And then the second layer is, how effectively am I communicating how different my show is?
Mm.
You know, you might have the best restaurant in the world, but if your name is terrible, if you're parked in a corner next to a dumpster, no one's gonna come to your
Yeah.
restaurant to eat some food. That's not gonna make sense. So how are you positioned in your market as something
Mhm.
different, and how are you communicating that in a unique way? A primary example could be if you have a relationship podcast helping men, become a better man, let's say, right? You could just have the typical, you know, strong men grown or something like that. Let's say the name of your show.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's all right. That's a bit cool, right? Whatever. But the unique positioning and how you communicate that in a more exciting way, because it needs to be wildly attractive. People's attention span are so small.
Yeah.
A more attractive way to position the podcast and effectively communicating its value is become the man she brags about.
Yep.
Same podcast, but if I promote those two podcasts, podcast A, become a grown man, I don't know, become the man you want to be, something like that, right? Or podcast B, become the man she brags about. If you're promoting that on social media, which one, Chris, is going to get more attention and get
Oh,
more
yeah.
men clicking and listening?
The one she brags about. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. When you guest on someone else's podcast, right, and you're promoting your show and you talk about the name of the podcast, which one's gonna have a high conversion to a new listener base?
Yeah. Same one.
Become the man she brags about.
Yep.
When you get a celebrity on your podcast and they bring their audience in and they see these two show names, which one are they gonna stick around to for longer?
Yep. Same one.
Become the man she brags about.
Yep.
You have to become the podcast you brag about.
I like it. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's something, we've done, 360 something episodes, I think now, or over that. And, we're at the point now, okay, hey, how do we freshen this up? Same thing kind of you're talking about. Like we've done great, top 1.5% globally listened to. We've charted, internationally, in the US, things like that. Podcast makes us some money. But it's like, okay, so how do we get to the next level? So like these are all things even now, like we're thinking about. And so I want to reiterate that, like when you're starting, you got to figure it out, but also you get to a point and you don't want to become complacent or stagnant. And so you have to kind of sometimes you have to rethink about it, or like, how can we innovate, or how can we freshen things up? And yeah, like
Mhm.
even us now, that's what we're doing.
So important. That is the starting point, and I think it's very easy to forget the basics. And look, I'll be honest with you, like it's something that when I first got started helping podcasters grow, I really struggled with because
Yeah.
it blew my mind that some shows would absolutely take off within 6 months, get to 10,000 monthly downloads with a show when they're barely promoting it. And
Yeah.
other people will be podcasting for 3, 4, 5 years and be struggling to get to 2,000 monthly downloads. I was like,
Right.
dude, what the hell? And then I've worked with clients, and I work with these two clients where one, we promote on social media, we get them big guests, we do the exact same thing as we would with other shows. But for
Sure.
some reason, this other show would just take off. And I remember just scratching my head thinking, dude, what the hell is going on here? Like, why is this happening? These are the exact same type of audiences, exact same type of shows, great hosts with the exact same strategies. How come one is just taken off and the other one isn't? But I was looking at
Mm.
promotion, guesting, all these other areas. But when I looked at the actual difference of the actual positioning, what makes this show different from every other show out there within this market, I noticed it's a history show.
Hmm.
Most history show pretty boring, pretty dead, pretty dull. No one really cares. I'm joking. Like most, I'm sure
Unless
there's a
like history, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
bunch of fans out there, but you get what I'm
yeah,
saying, right?
yeah.
But this show was different. It was called you'll recognize this name, Dick Heads of History.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea and the position of this show was it was a British comedic guy where he broke down and exposed famous people, historical figures who've been put on a pedestal and exposes some of the shady things they've done in the past
Oh
in
wow.
10-minute bite-sized episodes,
Okay.
right? That is a truly different show to every other
Yeah.
podcast about history out there.
Yep. Oh yeah. So it definitely like it polarizes the opposite of the norm. One with the title, that just makes you curious. Plus, he's a comedian, so I'm sure he's funny. And then two, those bite-sized episodes um, are really great. That's why we kind of like played around with my solos being shorter. So having the interview coming out on Monday being a longer one, and then I have two solos that come out that are usually fairly short, and so
Mm,
which has helped us grow some. I mean, we're still not to 10,000 a month. I mean,
mm,
I'm transparent with that stuff, but I mean, it's built our business, and it's
mm,
but I mean, shoot, I'd be lying if I said I don't want those numbers. So,
mm,
like, so that's again, this is why we had to, we're thinking about refreshing or at least how we position the show.
mm,
'Cause, the Elevate Media podcast is, fairly generic. It doesn't really give you a whole lot of detail what it's about, but if
mm,
the positioning, like, kind of how it's in the shows, elevate your life, elevate your brand, something
mm,
along that line. So it's more like, okay, this is all about improving, and we can clean that up and make that even more something that stands out more when we present it. And we're trying to do some other stuff with, you know, lot like why we're recording it, like some stuff popping up on screen and interaction type stuff.
mm,
But we're still in the planning of that. So,
mm.
but I like that. I mean, Dig Heads of History. I mean, it's a unique and it sticks out, and you have to be different somehow in one way or the other to set yourself apart.
Absolutely. That again, that's a starting point. And I guess if you're listening to this right now and thinking, Ant, dude, that sounds awesome. Chris, guys, I get it. Yeah, positioning, USP, my unique selling point. How am I different? I get all that. But practically speaking, what are the steps I should take? I want to give you 3 simple steps. The first thing that you need to do is explore your niche.
Mm,
Pick 5 shows who are the best performers in your industry and ask yourself, what are these people doing? Are they long form? Are they short form? Are they more serious and interview based, or are they solo?
yeah.
And whatever the average is based on that, if all of them on average are longer, they're far more serious and they are more interview based, how about yours be shorter, bite-sized episodes, more frequent, a bit more comedic, where you're storytelling?
Yeah.
Now your position is something different because when a market is filled with, let's say, chocolate bars and they're all like, dark chocolate, you eventually want, some white chocolate. That might be taken the completely wrong way. But you
Yeah, they
guys get
do.
what I'm saying, right? Right. The point is eventually over time, people start craving something a bit different. You should be that thing that's a bit different. So look at
Yeah.
your market, number one, and then ask yourself, what's everyone else doing? That's the second part. What's everyone else doing? And then how can I do the opposite thing and deliver my content in a unique way? Those
Yeah.
3 things, and that's how you really fine tune your positioning in the market.
Yeah. And those are great. Like, so everyone was like, those are legit, like 100% like work and should be what you're doing. And, it's funny because we talked a while back. about me starting my own kind of community course type thing. And
Mm,
it's a lot closer to being ready to go than it was last time. And we're
mm,
thinking through these same things for the
mm,
course, where the podcast could be renamed to fit align with that community, that course, and make everything streamlined there. Um, I hate rebranding again, but I think for the long term simplicity, I think um, it could be beneficial. And sometimes you have to make those decisions to be more understanding. So for those listening, you get to hear first with Anthony that we're going to be building a community called the Elevation Nation, and it's going to be
mm,
all about supporting men, solopreneurs who are trying to build something so they can support their family, spend more time with their family, and get out of the 9 to 5. And we're going to help them walk through steps, um, actionable things, real life things. I mean, from what I did with no business background or marketing background to what I'm able to build now and what's going to continue to build. So that's what we're kind of thinking about is, the Elevation Nation podcast, or just Elevation Nation and tie it right into the community and then just push it all together. Again, we're still thinking about it, but you have to think about those 3 steps,
mm,
even if it's not a podcast, even if you're, putting out a book or
mhm.
another product or another service. Like it's the same kind of things you have to think about. And so, those were 3 really crucial pieces that Anthony shared. So make sure if you didn't get them, go back, write those down, and start thinking about those within your own whatever it is you're working on trying to grow, because
Mm.
it's critical.
100%. Absolutely, man.
So you got your show. What's your goals with? What's your next goals, man? What are you doing the same thing? You're branching out to anything else, or where are you headed?
I've always had this vision when I first got into publishing and
Mm-hmm.
then started coaching podcasters
Yeah.
of helping podcasters, education-based shows that are topic focused, helping them monetize their podcasts through books by
Nice.
turning their podcast content into a best-selling authority building book that generates them an income.
Nice.
Me and my business partner generated multiple 6 figures from our own publishing company. We know the ins and outs. We've coached between the 2 of us, on a one-on-one basis, 1,000 plus, business owners on their journey to publishing their first book. So we've got a lot of experience with that.
Yeah.
And of course, we're also in a unique position where we've also helped podcasters grow and know the struggle of not even just growing, but once you have that audience, another problem arises. How do we get paid?
Right.
And then how do we make the most out of the content we already have? Some people have 100 plus episodes, 300 plus episodes. That's a lot of content and a lot of wisdom, but people are strapped for time. They
Yeah.
don't know how to publish a book. They don't know how to even turn their content into a book if they were to give it a go. And they're not aware that it's even a possibility. So to what we see it, and we've done it, we've helped clients do this. So my vision long term has always been like, hey, how do we help podcasters grow their audience and make it a positive ROI show? And to us, that mechanism of making it into a positive ROI show to get the most out of your show. Tim Ferriss, Lewis Hughes, Stephen Bartlett, their books was inspired from their podcast and interviews that they've done. They distilled the knowledge and wisdom from their podcasts and interviews and conversations into a book. It feels like
Yeah.
a natural transition. But most people get stuck because they don't know how to write a book and they don't know how to monetize a book. Most authors are completely broke. Whereas we are in a position where we can help them grow their audience, extract the value from their podcast, distill it into a book and a product they can sell to their listeners and generate income month after month after month.
Yeah.
With something that they're proud of, So that to me, that's the long term that really gets me excited. But in the short term, it's always going to be just serving to the best of our abilities our clients, helping
Yeah.
them get the best results, helping them get better results faster. That's always a thing, helping our clients get better results faster. And we just obsess over that. Um, that's all that matters, right? If you're not getting your clients results, what the hell are you doing? If you're not working hard every single day, waking up, putting in your all, and you're
Yep.
just taking money to take money, not putting in your all to solve the actual problem that they gave you money for, it's not worth it. It's not a good life to live. But if you're
Right.
waking up every day, you're giving your absolute all, and you're doing the service that you promise your clients, it's happy days. And I love our clients, and it's the most fulfilling feeling when they go from literally unclear, have no idea how to grow their show, to fully confident and having their podcast blow up, that is immense. Like, I genuinely mean it. It's awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Lights me up.
No, and guys, because I do know Anthony, or I have known him for a while, like it's true what he's saying. Like he cares. He wants to make a difference. He is making a difference. So like he's a genuine, just awesome dude, and what they're doing is really awesome. And so I'm excited to just continue to see him do that, make an impact and make a difference. And can say I was there at the beginning and starting how everything started. And it's just a cool thing. So one last question, Anthony, with this, like, so say people they go through 3 steps, they got that kind of figured out. So they have, I mean, they're clear, it's attractive, it's going to resonate with that audience. What then do you think is the next best step in getting more eyes on it quicker? Is it podcast guesting? Is it getting into Facebook groups? What is your kind of guidance with that going forward?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So once that piece is done, the next piece will be looking at your content strategy.
Yeah.
Again, this is kind of not a sexy answer people are looking
Yeah.
for, but then actually building out the podcast with this unique positioning. I'm thinking about, okay, how do I package each episode to sell itself? How do I package the podcast to also sell itself? That's the
Right.
second thing. So really looking at Google, looking at YouTubers who are in the same niche as you, covering a similar content. How are they talking about this content? What are the titles that they're using? What's currently grabbing your audience's attention? Just use that and make it your own. You haven't got to recreate the wheel and guess. Like, that's the worst thing. Have a data-driven approach of how you approach your content, because that's the thing that's going to keep people coming back for more. There's no point getting exposure on a podcast if you can't get people coming back for more. It will be impossible to grow a podcast if you can't get people coming back for more. So you have to get your listeners coming back for more. And that comes down to your USP, your unique positioning, how different your show is to everything else out in the market, and your demand-based content strategy. That's the approach that we use to help us pinpoint what's capturing our listeners' attention. Go to YouTube, go to Google, see how other people in the industry are ranking high with the titles that they use.
Yeah.
Then we get to the fun part.
All
Now
right.
it comes to really looking at podcast SEO, which keywords we want to rank for to get organic growth on Apple and Spotify, right? That's 4 parts: discoverability, finding the right keywords. Ask yourself, if my listeners were to find my podcast, what would they search in? Whatever that search term is, add that in your episode title, your show name, your show description, and consistently. The second thing is looking at your visibility, your cover art, your attractive episode titles to attract them in. The third thing, user engagement, having a high engagement rate, making sure you have a high listen time through your episodes so Apple and Spotify are incentivized to share your podcast. If not, they're your boss. They're not going to just like promote something and offer your podcast that's not going to sell. That's not going to get people to click and listen. That's not going to get people to stick around. So, how do you have a high retention time to make sure you're being recommended to more people and getting more organic exposure, growing your show month after month? You have a strong hook at the start of your episode. You state 3 benefits listeners will gain. By the end of this episode, you'll discover the number one thing that holds most podcasters back from faster growth. You will discover why every podcast needs a book if they want to build the authority without writing the book themselves. And finally, you'll discover the 3-step process to getting your podcast ranked higher on Apple and Spotify. If you start at the start of an episode, people will listen to the end because you've gave them a promise that they've came for. Now you're gonna have to deliver on that promise through your episode. That's how you have a high listen time. That's how you have a high engagement time. And that's how you get Apple and Spotify to recommend your show over your competitions. And then the final piece is building relevancy. If you're following on right now, and I'm speaking fast, but I want to make sure I give you all the value I possibly can in the condensed form. The final piece is then thinking, okay, what other keywords could I rank for? If I'm in business, what type of business? Is it online business? Is it, okay, would my listeners, what problems do they have? Is it limiting beliefs? Is it self-sabotage? Okay, cool. I'm going to rank for limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, and online business. And then have those keywords consistently in your titles. You start ranking more for those keywords. You get that organic growth. And then the final piece is just guest on as many podcasts. Once you're uniquely positioned as the market with a USP, a show that is wildly attractive, once you have a demand-based content strategy that's based on demand of what your listeners are actively looking for, not just guesswork, and once you're growing organically because your podcast is ranked higher on Apple and Spotify for highly searched keywords, and you're growing month after month, you have a proven podcast that turns people, strangers, into listeners and get those listeners coming back for more. Is growing month after month. So now when you turn on the exposure, and you send that audience when you're guessing other people's podcasts, right? When you're promoting on social media, when you're having celebrities come on and bring their audience, all of that exposure is being shown to a podcast that's proven to turn
Right.
them in, to turn strangers into listeners, and to get those listeners coming back for more.
Yeah.
That is how you grow a show. So exposure piece, guesting a boatload on other people's podcasts with a similar show to yours, promoting on social media heavily and doing it the right way, where you're providing value, not just promoting, but
Yeah.
providing value. And every single person who likes your post, don't assume they're going to go and listen to the podcast. They won't. Reach out to them, get an assistant, get a team member to actively reach out to anyone who engages with your podcast content.
Yeah.
And then the final piece, when you get celebrities on, make sure you're focusing on topics you know is going to attract their audience.
Mm.
That is how you grow a show month after month after month, without all the stress and hard work of just focusing on social media.
Awesome. Well, man, it's been fantastic. And yeah, do you make sure you guys save this episode, whatever it is, add it to your list. Like, go back and listen to this again so you don't miss anything Anthony said about growing. Because it works not just for your podcast. If you don't have a podcast, it can still work for your book. It can still work for your course, just tweaked a little bit with the wording. But like, this is gold right here. And so, Anthony, man, it's been awesome. I'm so glad we finally made this work.
I know, man. I'm pumped.
Yeah, I know. And it's a long time coming, and it won't be the last time, which is good too. And but man, if people want to connect with you, if they want your help, if they want to just learn more from you, where's the best place for them to go?
If you like this and you got all the way to the end, look, I'd recommend checking out While Your Podcast Isn't Growing. If you're a podcaster, business owner, coach, expert in your field, and you're looking to grow your podcast with just genuine insight, value-packed episodes that are super fun and engaging, check out While Your Podcast Isn't Growing. My biggest recommendation would be episode number 2, 7 reasons why most podcasters struggle to grow their podcast. That is a great starting point. Again, episode 2, 7 reasons why most podcasters struggle to grow their podcast. That will just give you the insight of why most people struggle to grow. And if you want to connect with me just personally, check out me on LinkedIn. I'm now getting back in the game of LinkedIn, posting a bit more, put my face out there. So if you're on LinkedIn, go to, again, Anthony Ari, and you'll find me there posting consistently.
Awesome. Yeah, everybody definitely check out his show, learn from him, get connected with him on LinkedIn, and seek out his help if you need it. And again, Anthony, thanks so much for being on the podcast today, man.
Absolutely, man. It's
Awesome.
a pleasure.
Absolutely. And if you guys know someone who's trying to grow their show, they're trying to get out there, get more exposure, grow what they're doing, share this with them. We can make a bigger difference together by doing so other people can hear Anthony's insight and learn from him. So go ahead and share this. And if you're not following yet, make sure you go subscribe, follow the show. We appreciate it. And until next time, continue to elevate your life, elevate your brand, and we'll talk to you later.